Alright, we should now be live once again. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's live stream where I'm going to be working on my particle system once again. I have a few things that I want to add, and hopefully I'll be able to get this one up on Gumroad soon, once again. This whole setup and all the presets are up on Gumroad for free currently, because this is very much still a work in progress. And again, this is in Blender 4.1 because we don't have the ease of use that features in 4.0. So this is in 4.1, very experimental. I'll probably need to revamp this entire thing to make it more official eventually, but right now it's not half bad. In Blender 4.1 we also got a new node, which I want to play around with, the menu switch node, which I will, let me get that one out, the menu switch node, which we will go and play around with that later. But first of all, I want to go and make a new preset, because I need to make some new nodes for this. So I'm going to go and make a new, actually, maybe I should duplicate a collection instead, because I don't want to remake everything from scratch. That's no fun. So yeah, I'll just copy this one, move it into new collection. This will be mesh. Let's see, mesh. That should be fine. Ooh, that's new. Huh. Alright. So let's go over to here, duplicate the particle system. Alright, so what I want to do is make it so that instead of particles forming like this, we have an object, let's say an icosphere, moving around, and then the trails form based off of that. Because I found a use case where the particle trails will be a little bit iffy. So I need to go and fix that. So here I'm just going to add in some procedural animation using noise. Let's see. Actually, why did that only keyframe? There we go. A little odd. Let's go and add in a noise modifier. Let's make the scale 0.1. It's interesting that the smaller the scale is, the... Wait, is that... Okay, yep, there we go. Let's set this to be 75. Then let's make the strength bigger. I just want some general rotation and such. Let's go and copy that over to there, change the phase so that we have some rotation like that. That's good. Let's go and add that to the location as well, randomize it even more so that we have some movement. Let's see, like that, maybe 20. I want this to go around. Let's copy this once again, move it over to here, change the phase, so that we can have an orb that moves around, so that we can then add the particles to that. And wow, we have 27 people here, only 3 minutes in. Hello everyone, and welcome. I know it's been a while, I have been busy. I have been very busy. Alright. I got pretty close to burnout, so I needed to make this a bit more sustainable, shall we say. Let's see. Hi there, are you using EVNext for the viewport? No. EVNext has been delayed until Blender 4.2, which means that it will have been delayed for over 2 years. At the moment, EVNext is very much not ready. It crashed, well, the last time I tried using it, which was like maybe a week ago, it would crash when you would try to use it. It is not ready in the slightest, which is very unfortunate. 2 years after it was supposed to release, it is still nowhere near ready. Right, for the size, we don't really need that in there. Let's just simplify this. So the goal is to have that icosphere. Let's go and move that in there and move that into the sim collection. The goal is to have this transform. It's how do we make it so that a mesh can interact with the particle system easily as kind of either a spawner or just trace the points on the mesh. So let's set this to points. And instead of having the particle system, I'm just going to go and circumvent that, just go around it. We don't need that. So the goal is to have something that's, again, this simple. So if we do this, we can see that it's not working. And you might be wondering, why isn't it working? Well, that's because due to the way I set up the particle system, it needs the ID to be set. So in this case, we need to set that to be the index. And we can see now that it is tracing. But there's another little issue. The trail normal is incorrect. Oh, wait, normal? Wait a second. Yeah, it's the normal, isn't it? So to do this, we can either... We could use the curved tangent. Like, by default, it should use the curved tangent, or just be Z up. But... I need to think about this. Because usually, in the ecosystem of my particle system, it uses the velocity of the particle. But here, let's see, we want curved tangent. But here there is no velocity because, again, the thing's just moving. So for this, to get the normal from the curved tangent of the thingy, is that should be working. Odd. Oh, custom normal. That's why. Okay, now we have the trails working, and they're a little, not quite as good as I would like, so let me make that a bit bigger. Maybe let's extend the lifetime to be more like 50, because I want this to look as good as it can. Let's switch this to be a wireframe. There we go. So that we can see, oh, that looks pretty cool. Now let's switch this to bounds, because eventually this will not be rendered. So, yeah. Then we have the icospheres being instanced, and oh, the size scale. Yeah, let's go and turn that off. There we go. So now, with that and that, we now have this working, which is good. And the camera line is technically on. Oh, wait. Camera line is just working. Okay. Well, that's better. I forgot about that. It's been a while and I've forgotten how my own particle system works that I built from scratch. It's not that bad. But yeah, that makes sense. The camera... Actually, no. Camera line is currently off. Wait, what? I am confused. Let me look inside of it. So, oh right. To point the mesh to the camera, I'm using the velocity, when I could just use the tangent, but that leads to semi-inaccurate results. So I could just go and copy this and then replace that with that if I wanted it to be camera aligned. But this feels like something that I would have to remake for the next version. Because, I don't know, it's a weird design choice with this. Custom normal, there we go. So now this is aligned to the camera, but also it doesn't rely on particle velocity because, again, this is not relying on particles. It's relying on a mesh. But that works, and it works pretty well. I could assign a random color to all this just to make it look cool. Actually, wait a minute. Should I go and make this... Yeah, let's go and make a new material for all this. So for this, oh, it is lagging. Okay, must have done a little autosave. Let's have this to be trail Ico. Oh. Ico, there we go. This will be sim Ico and so on. Oh wait, why is that inside of that collection? It needs to be just in there. Ico sim. Yeah, Ico sim. Alright. That should be good. Will you do setups for Houdini 2? No, because one, my work doesn't require it, and it's less applicable to stuff that I can put up on Gumroad. Houdini is extremely powerful, but it is not as accessible as Blender, so I'm hoping to get Blender as the geometry nodes and all that as powerful as it can be, because Houdini, there's the open source aspect of Blender versus Houdini and so on, but it's just, I don't know, easier for people to be like, oh, download this thing in Blender. Oh, I already have Blender. Instead of I don't know, download Houdini, learn Houdini tutorials in order to do that. I'm in the Blender ecosystem, which has its downfalls with, again, geometry nodes being very limited at the moment in terms of getting external data. Like, how on earth would you get the, like, how would you get the, you know, the scene resolution, the frames per second, all that good stuff. And all these settings should be, oops, sorry. These should be easily obtainable with geometry nodes, but they're not, which is not good for the long-term effectiveness of geonodes. So I'm hoping that that gets upgraded soon, but again, geonodes development is currently on ice, kind of. It's technically not being developed actively, but there are still some improvements because the devs made stuff for 4.1 and they can't just, sorry, what was I saying? It is not an option for them to just let it, those updates for 4.1 not go through, which is good. I'm glad that all those improvements were not eliminated, because that would have been really, really sad. Alright. So the age, there is no age in this sim, technically, because it's, again, technically not a particle simulation, it's just tracking an object. So I could just go and put that there and it should be okay. But I could use the trail age. Now let's use trail age, because that data is still in there. Alright. Let's take a look at this. Actually, I need to double check. Oh, wait. Oh, I didn't even assign the material. Whoopsie. Let's go into trail mesh. Let's switch that to trail ICO. Now there's no input to there because I did not set a color attribute. We don't need, well, I have another plan with this. I want to also make it so that particles spawn from a mesh, but keep the velocity of that mesh. So I'll need to make a setup for that. But for the moment, I want to store a, ooh, it's cool that we have that there now. Let's store a color attribute. In this case, it will be a random color. I could animate this, but for the moment, I don't think that is necessary. So we do that, and it will be inherited by both of the systems that I have set up right here, which will be good. Let's see, let's go and put that in there. Always put your node setups in frames. Keep them organized, because you will not remember in a week. You will not. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so that's close to what I want. But I also need to duplicate that instanced icosphere. Icosphere. Let's go and just put that inside of the icosim right there. So that I can have a custom material and so on. And I forgot to label that other material. Whoopsie. Okay. Mesh ico. Yeah, should be fine. Okay, let's go into here, swap out the instance with the secondary icosphere. Mesh ico. Yeah, it'll be fine either way. Okay, so now that that's good, we can now edit that material. So shader editor, let's go over to this one right over here, and let's make the color the color. Or no, it just needs to be this one. Control H, color, instancer. Yep, that should be fine. So now we should see that the data is exactly the same. There we go. Now we can customize this either in the shader editor or in the geometry node editor. Like, if you change what it looks like in the GeoNode editor, it'll be the same for both automatically, because, again, you're just viewing the actual data. But that requires, like, your sim to change whenever you make an update to it, so, yeah. I could go and eliminate, let's see, maybe the green. There we go. Yeah, we get all the nice magentas and such. This is one case where the AGX color space would be a little bit more beneficial, maybe, because the brights are not overly saturated and such. But I'm still getting used to AGX versus Filmic. I don't really know the rules as well as I do with the other one. Alright. So we have that. I just need to go and make the trails look better. So let's go over to the shader editor. Let's see. So we have that. We're not getting a random offset for all of these, which I do not, I don't have data for that. So maybe I should store that data, but it's probably unnecessary. Let's go and do this so that we have more reliable trails. And that looks good enough. Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. Alright. There we go. But the color should be different. It should be. So let's switch this out for something a little bit different. We can do that. Let's change it to be... Oh, that's not bad. I also could normalize this so that it will have a power of 1 guaranteed. So if I do that... no, that doesn't look that great. Let's see. In the icosphere rotating, it doesn't look... It's a little bit too slow for my tastes. But let's go and try out... let's see, which one is it? Oh, wait a second. Didn't I add that? Oh no, that did not get saved. In a test version of the particle trail system, I added in the option to offset the trail after all the calculations happen. Which would be good. And I probably should re-add that as an option. But we'll see. Okay, so now that we have this, I do want to make the other system where particles spawn from the moving icosphere, and then they get trailed and such. But I will wait on that for a quick second. So we have that, and it's... Actually, what if we just don't have the noise effect? It won't look as good, but it's more consistent with the entire effect. Let's go into the GeoNode editor, go over here, switch this back around. I think I liked the magentas a little bit more. And we don't need the normalize, it just makes things a little more confusing. Even though, let me put this to be scene time seconds. This will make it so that it gets randomized every single second, which if we have this within the full range of colors, we can see that it is very hard to see. Wow. Since the trails get left behind, if there are any attribute changes, the parts that already exist will not change automatically, which is what you want. You want the trails to trail every single attribute. So if I were to... Actually, do I have the hue saturation or combine color node? Let's change this to be hue saturation value. I'll make it so that every second... Let's see. Every 4 seconds, it will cycle through the entire color scheme. Saturation value. So here we go. The colors are now cycling, and everything's just going as it should, which is pretty good. Pretty cool. I'm still not the biggest fan of how slow the icosphere is moving. Here, let me go and change that as well. If you have any ideas, please let me know. I'm kind of just chilling, doing an easy project at the moment. Because, again, burnout. Burnout is a very real thing. And I came to the realization of, oh, wait, I'm just making the most basic particle system that is, like, default in every other program except Blender. So I shouldn't be trying that hard when I have many other projects calling me. Let's see, that's pretty good. We could increase the noise to make it a little more, I don't know, crazy. I don't think that's really... Let's lower that back down. What about the rotations? Let's increase the detail. All that. Let's see. You know, the problem with the rotations is that they are not nearly strong enough. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, seeing this, like, I was going to make this in a separate Blender file, not with the, not in the particle system that I set up, not in the main one that's going to be on Gumroad, because I wanted this to have, like, a different background, different lighting, but I didn't want people to have to switch that around when, playing around with it, so this is all going to be in one file, but if, let me also save this in its current state, if, here, let's switch all this to be black, just go and hide everything else. Like, this as a screensaver could be cool, again, with some edits. It's getting there. Ooh, it looks like they might have fixed the bug where pressing Control Z completely broke the simulations. I hope they did, because that's existed for over an update now. So, again, like, with 4.1, it's basically 4.0, but with the finished projects, like the subpanels are now in the modifier tab as they should have been, and other bugs are being fixed. And apparently simulation nodes will be fixed, will be completed, where materials will now work like they did over a year ago at this point. But we will see about that. It's mentioned because of the bake node. They use the same tech. It's mentioned that materials will be saved. And I hope that makes it into the final thing. But again, we will see. Alright, So I could make the icosphere bigger, smaller, which that's cool. That's very cool. Maybe I could do that in the geometry node side. Or no, I could just, well... Procedural animation in Blender is still a ways away from being, I don't know, good to the degree that I want. Because when adding in, like, noise to an animation, it's like, okay, here's a noise texture, but it's still very basic. One day we might get object level nodes, maybe collection nodes, which could be cool. But I think it'll be years before we get that. So, we shouldn't hold our breath regarding that. I feel like this should be a smaller icosphere. Here, let me go and make an icosphere with less points. And let's see. Copy rotation, location. So I'm going to join these two together. And now I'll just delete one of them. The one with more points, I believe. Alright, let's delete that and take a look at this one. I think that's pretty cool. We get to see the trails much better. Maybe I should have more rotations happening. Because right now, I only have it on 2 axes when I probably should have it on all 3. But that makes it a little more annoying to maintain. I'm always thinking big scale when it comes to these setups. It's like, okay, what are all the possible things that the users would see? Would they be confused by the, like, where's the animation coming from? What is this? What is the noise? Because not many users use this often. But yeah. They said that physics for the new hair system is not coming anytime soon. And that makes sense. Yeah. Like, the technology for that is just... There is a way to do it. And I know of that way. Am I going to make it? Maybe? But it won't be efficient. Right now, geometry nodes is not nearly at the level that it needs to be for something like that. For something as... for something fast enough and practical enough. It's possible. But, I don't know. I want to make the trails bigger according to age. But yeah, the new hair system, I have my, map range. I have my thoughts about it. It doesn't feel like, it feels like it came way too early in geometry nodes. It was made specifically for, charge, so that they could have a hair system, because the current one was not good enough, which I, agree with. But... I don't know. Ooh, that's so cool. Like, seeing... Even though this isn't a proper dispersion of the trail, it looks like it is, and I really like that. Like, so many things I've been doing have been trying to make GPU particles and GPU style effects in Blender, even though all this is on the CPU, but anyway, I digress. But yeah, the new hair system is not, it came way too early. Like, do I have access to the hair nodes? I don't want to add them. Okay, I'm gonna save this and then add these to the file, and then I'll reset it. But yeah, let's take a look at the displace hair curves node. Like this is a mess. Just this one node is a mess because, again, subpanels don't exist. If we look at the hair system in regular old, the old one, please don't make me regret this, it's all panels and nested panels. So even right now in 4.1, in the latest version that I got today, the hair system, the infrastructure for nodes is not enough to make a good hair system. So a year ago, when they made, was it a year ago? Maybe a bit more. When they made Charge, when they made the hair system for Charge, geometry nodes was not nearly good enough to support something like that. So we got a mess like that. And then if you look inside the nodes, like, oh no. Wait, why? If you look inside the nodes, this one isn't bad. There are some nodes where if you look, let's look at interpolate hair curves. Now this one, again, the UI is a complete mess. Because, again, another thing with geometry nodes that we still can't control is the default size of the nodes, which is not great. Are you able to show the Moth wings geonodes at all? I can, and I probably should. But if we look inside, like this, it feels like there should be a better way to handle this than, you know, this. And by the way, the interpolate curves node is a default node, which I'm very surprised by. It's hard-coded. They had to make a hard-coded node for that, which I was very surprised by. But the hard-coded node is inside a gigantic node group. We can see all that happens. And as you can tell by my voice, I'm not entirely thrilled by seeing stuff like this. It feels very... It was using technology that wasn't ready yet. So they did what they could, but still was not nearly ready. Curl hair curves. Oh, this one I remember. Was this one bad? No, this one wasn't too bad. Create guide index map and all that. But yeah, so much spaghetti in these. I am glad that they use frames though, so it makes it a little more digestible, even though it is still very difficult for me to comprehend. But again, hair simulations on top of all this can barely happen. They can barely happen. Which I have made some, but they don't use tangent space with the curves, and I need to figure out how to make the tangent space work correctly, which I'm close to, but I don't want to hit my brain against that any longer because it was very annoying, and I am busy. What is that? Where's that? Let's see, deform curves on surface node. This node is very weird because it's only an input and an output. There are no other inputs to it, which people have complained that's a black box of a node, and I agree wholeheartedly. You should be able to, like, change the attributes that are being used, but they can't. They're hard-coded. I looked inside the code for this. It uses what named attribute was it? Surface UV coordinate. It uses that under the hood, and that's not that's a named attribute, a regular named attribute. It's not, sorry, I'm trying to think of the words. It's not like an internal attribute, like rest position in like the armature node. I think that's one that's in there. I need to look at that again. But that one should be exposed for other people to be able to edit for custom node groups. But if you look at this node, you don't even know if that attribute's being used. It's hard-coded, and it's annoying. You can't even determine which object the curve is being deformed by, because I believe it's using the parent object, but I'm not sure. Another thing that we cannot get in geometry nodes right now, we can't see, oh, what's the parent object? We just can't, because our ability to find external data with geometry nodes is extremely limited, and it is very subpar. I hope that gets changed. It could be changed by adding in a view layer attribute node, but the developers do not have time for that. But if you are a community developer and you are interested in contributing to geometry nodes, please contact me, because I have some ideas. Again, if you have time. Alright. Because the community additions to geometry nodes have been amazing. We got the viewer text node, which, let me go and showcase this. What should I view? Let's see, let's view the curves input. Oh, let's view the curves input with that. So here I have this enabled in the, let's see, attribute text input right there. But here we can see the actual numbers. The visibility of the numbers isn't that great. They did mention they were going to change that. But I'm not sure if that will make it into 4.1. Alright, I should get off of this topic because I could talk about the geometry nodes shortcomings for a long time. But let's go to, let's see, that Moth one. I will read the chat. Let's see, sine wave wings. Okay, so here we are with the Moth one. Let me read the chat before we really get moving with this. Also, hello to the 32 people that are here. I hope you are enjoying the little bit of streaming that I'm doing at the moment. Streams will be a lot more rare going forward because I am busy. Very busy. Okay. Let's see, what Blender 4.1 date is the one you're using? I am using today's build, because it has the menu switch, which I need to go over. Okay. Let's see, I love Blender. Oh, very good. Blender favorite video editor. Funnily enough, the latest video that I made, I did use Blender to edit. Simply because I could not be bothered to make it in anything else. It was just a simple thing. I was like, okay, let's just throw it in there, edit, send it out. But yeah. Again, you should not rely on Blender for everything. In the past, I would rely on Blender for every single aspect of my workflow. That's not good. You need to diversify the programs you use, because one, it makes you way more employable, and two, it makes you feel, I don't know, you feel more competent when just doing other things, because you're not like, oh, what does this program use? Because you've used it before. Okay. Could you use the store named attribute to store a group input of a geometry tree and use it in another geometry tree? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, but you can't use the store named attribute node to store geometry. But you could use it to store data that you then sample from one geometry to another. So it's kind of possible. Let's see. Hello, Pablo. Nope, that's tomorrow. Yes, the Blender Todays. I do watch those, occasionally. But it's been, there's useful information there. Like, they talked about the hair system in physics, in the last Blender Today, and it was not optimistic. Which I was like, yep, that makes sense. Geometry nodes just isn't there, and probably won't be there for another few years. At least to a good degree. Because in theory, I could try making a KD tree for the hair self-collisions. I would need to figure that out. In theory, I could figure out how to make the local rotations work for all that, to make sure that the curling and all that properly works. I could, but it would be a pain, as someone who does not have a big programming background. But yeah. Oh, let me talk about this just so that you can see what's going on. So this is the sine wave wings. You may have seen a variant of this on Twitter or YouTube. I forgot which ones I posted. But this is the node setup for this. It's not the simplest. I could make it simpler, but it's fine. So the input geometry is just this, just a simple moth wing. And then what we do is we take a sine wave and then rotate this. So let's take a look at the output. There are 2 vector rotate nodes, simply because I needed the rotation axes to be ordered in a different way than they are by default. By default, they're X, Y, Z, while on this I needed the Y axis to go first and the Z axis second. But I should show... Actually, I could recreate this live. Do you think that would be good? I think that would be good. So let's wipe this and then remake it from scratch. Alright. I was thinking about making a tutorial for this, but I, again, don't have time for it. Scene time. So what we want to do is have a sine wave to rotate this object. So let's go and get the position and then a vector rotate node. So let's rotate vector. No, vector rotate. Yes, this one. So with this one, I could use Euler, but I think one axis at a time is more understandable for people. So we want this to rotate on the y-axis first, because we want the wings to be waving. You'll see that our first problem here is that the rotation is not mirrored. To do that, it's not too difficult, but, you know. Let's go and get the sine waves into here. So let's use the frame range, just because it's a little easier to deal with. In terms of making it loop, I think. Maybe. Let's divide it by 30, and then put it into a sine wave. Now let's plug that into the output. There we go. So here we can now see, maybe let's set it to 10. Now we can see that the wings are now waving. And that's just because it's a sine wave. We can use a multiply node to change how much they wave. In this case, I think 1 is okay. We should now make this mirror according to where it is on the XY, or let's see. Let's just combine that. Sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained today. Let's see. Scatterbrained. So we have that, and we want it to mirror on both axes. Now you could do this with just a mirror modifier after the fact, which I could do here. It would be simpler, but maybe it's good to show how to actually do it. So for here, I'm just going to take the position, separate the X, Y, and Z. In this case, we want the X-axis. Use a greater than 0, and then maybe use a switch node. Let's set this to be a float, to set this between 1 and -1, so that we can just multiply the output by whatever we want. So now it is mirrored. I think I'll flip those around. But yeah, that's that to mirror the animation. Again, this isn't a proper tutorial. I would have structured this much better. It's just a simple breakdown of what's going on. So hopefully that is understandable. So it's just greater than 0. I can collapse that as well and just move it up. There we go. Let's just move this over to here. And then for the other axis, we can just copy this and then rotate around the x-axis. And again, if you're wondering why I'm not going to use the Euler method for that, it's because the rotation order needs to be customizable. Because with, again, Euler, it's x, y, z, while in here I'm doing y, then x. So we can copy this, but we do not need that at all. And we just want to put an add node here to delay the y rotation, or the x rotation in this case. Because as we can see, that's not what we want. It's a little bit too strong. So let's go and set this to be a little more like, I don't know. It needs to be very little. Getting the timing right can be a bit of a pain. And this is way too effective at the moment. Let's see. Or wait, no, I did this different on the actual setup. But that's kind of alright. Let's see. I've been away from my Blender projects for a while, so I am forgetting what I did. Actually, I don't think we need the y-axis. Yeah, no, let's just make this simpler. I don't think we need it for the time being, but if you want to, that's how you would do it. So, what we want is to offset the time by the distance to the object's origin. So let's get the distance. Well, We could use length or distance. It shouldn't really matter all too much. But let's use an add node and then a multiply so that the wave propagates from the center of the object. Now, as we can see here, it looks like it's waving, but let's make this a subtract node so that it looks like it's fully delayed. Like this. And now we can see the wings look like they're elegantly waving. But, let's go and we can multiply the position to change the distance, the effective distance. So here, we can multiply this by a... Oh, maybe that's why it wasn't working. We can multiply this by a lot to make the offset in the y-axis more extreme, making something like that. You probably don't want this, but again, we can offset the distance so that it's a little more like, I don't know, like that. Again, you probably don't... Oh, no, wait, that's all right. Yeah, that's okay. And then you could multiply this by even more to do that. But, you know, whatever you want. So let's go and make that a bit better. So there you go. That's how you would make the wings that wave. And it should be pretty good. And then this will just be the master effector for how much of the time offset happens. Because this is the benefit of doing this procedurally rather than a simulation. You get much more fine-tuned control of this, while still having the procedural aspect of it, the math-based aspect of it. As we can see here, it's not... This node setup is not bad. It could be better, again, because mirroring the rotation. Oh, wait a second, isn't there... I think I forgot that there's a sign... Oh, this is going to be confusing. There's a sign with SIGN node, which I think does... Yeah, no, it does the same thing. Okay. So there's sign, which I don't use that node often. I forget what it does, the math operation. But it seems to make it so that in the x positive axis, it's just 1, and then on the x negative axis, it's -1. I'm not sure about that. I would need to double check, because again, I don't use that operation often. And then there is just the regular sine, which is a sine wave. But yeah. Let me read the chat once again. Hopefully that was understandable. Also for the shader, it's a bit of a mess, but that's just because I was testing. So let's look at the color. Here I just take, there's a gradient at the edges. I mix that with a noise texture to mix a couple colors together. So it looks like this. You know, most of this isn't necessary. I was just testing to see what worked and what didn't. And then there's noise right there. So for the alpha, what I use is the gradient right here. And then I mix it with the noise in order to make it look like it's not just a mesh. Hiding that it's a mesh is the best. Or, you know, a very polygonal mesh. So there we get the kind of, not dithering, but the breakup in the gradient. Or, no, the alpha clip. And then for the normals, which people have said it looks like a Pringle. They are correct. It was unintentional, but when I was making it, I was like, yep, this kind of looks like a Pringle. But for the normal, I'm using my hexagon setup, which you could just use white noise or noise for this. But I just found that hexagons looked a little bit better than regular noise, just a little. Than regular snapped white noise. Because if you wanted to make this, you could just use a snap node into white noise. It could be 2D in this case. But here, you can just make it so that's like that, make it a little bit smaller. I'm just using the node groups that I have already because they are convenient. And then I feed that into the normal, which... Oh, shoot. I think I messed something up. I did! Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, so we have the geometry normal, and then we edit that with the hexagons to make it look kind of glitter-y. And then we mix that with noise to break it up a little bit. And then I did add a bump node, but this is very... Like, if I were to make this better, I would just completely get rid of quite a bit of this. A lot of it is very unnecessary. Like, this part, unnecessary. So let's go and simplify this. It's easy to make a big node setup. It's difficult to make it good while it's still... with it still being small. Like, ideally, you would just bake out the texture in the normals, and then you're good. Just plug in two things and you're good. Make it applicable to a game engine or any Eevee render. Cough, cough, charge. If you look at that file, the textures are mostly procedural, which means that they are the heaviest thing on the planet. Which is very funny, given that Charge was to showcase Eevee's real-time capabilities. Or, I guess, no, I don't think it was ever heralded as Eevee real-time for a full cinematic. But, yeah. Don't use procedural textures if you want something to be real-time. Bake it out. Think of it like Eevee is like a game engine renderer. It's a rasterizer. Treat it as such. Bake the stuff out, and you'll have a much better time in your life. But I will have to caveat that with saying don't bake in Blender. Bake either with baking add-ons or with another program, because Blender's default baking is very much old and a bit broken. It is severely outdated. If you try using denoising with the baking, it will leave horrendous seam lines everywhere. Black seam lines, wherever there's a seam. Simply because it's not right. Like, the denoising pass seems to happen before the buffer pass for the texture, which is really bad, but it's assumed that the baking setup in Blender is very much at the end of life. Just like the particle system, just like all of the physics systems in here. End of life. But when we'll get the new stuff, it'll be years. So we have to deal with what we've got. Use the add-ons if you can, because they'll be much better. Alright. Okay, let me read the chat again. Let's see. If you have seen Doctor Strange, could you possibly do a video on stream on how to create the mirror dimension effect? I don't know how difficult it would be, but if it is too difficult, it's fine. That effect, depending on how authentic you want it to be, it could either be fairly straightforward or a huge pain in the butt. Years ago, before geometry nodes was ever a thing, I was able to recreate it using the Blender's default particle system. That was very stupid. Don't do that. But with the mirror dimension effect, it's like, okay, we're going to duplicate this object and then move it around, scale it down. That's very simple. You just have points that have like a scale attribute and a moving attribute, and then you just cycle that through again and again, instance with whatever object you have on it, and then it'll look, like the mirror dimension. But the thing with the mirror dimension is that they used booleans quite a bit in that. And if you know anything about booleans in Blender, is that they are unreliable, frustrating, and slow. They will glitch out significantly, and they are just not great at all. So I would recommend not doing that if you can avoid it, but it is possible in geometry nodes. I'm not sure I'll make a video on that, though. Let's see. Just didn't know because it would include some cool fractals and transforming buildings. I forget if the mirror dimension had fractals. I forget. But the moving buildings around and such, it's possible in Blender, just it would require booleans, and Blender's booleans are really bad in terms of speed, and they tend to glitch out often. Let's see, it kind of looks like Jean Jacket's final form in Nope. I have tried making that before, but that requires cloth simulations, and let's just say I tried to recreate the cloth simulations in Blender, and I cannot recommend that. I should try it again with the knowledge that I have now, but again, geometry nodes is not ready for a super concrete version of that. It would be nice if we had the function node, though. I think that was a community edition, but as far as I know, it has not been worked on since December. So we'll see if it ever gets added. I hope it does, though. It would make geometry nodes much more viable for, I don't know, stuff, when you can actually use the equations, when coders can just copy the equations that they already know into geometry nodes instead of having to convert it to a bunch of nodes. Because, you know, it would be good if the noding, if the node workflow and the coding workflows got closer together instead of, hey, you're in the node range, you cannot use code. That I don't like. The two workflows should not be completely isolated. Nodes are for accessibility, but the code can be more convenient, especially when copying or transferring equations, because, again, you won't find many physics papers that use nodes like this. Alright. Any update on gizmos for geonodes? As far as I know, development has completely frozen on them. As far as I know. I could be wrong about that, but there was one test, just like the for each loop, just like many other nodes. But development, as far as I know, is completely frozen on those. Would be cool to have them, but I would not expect them. Actually, let me check this one more time. Yep, no gizmos. Like, there were supposed to be volume nodes in 4.1. Those didn't make it, not enough time. Let's see. A sign returns either positive or negative as 0 or 1. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I always found a way to use music. I found a way to use music in geonodes. It's annoying but involves spectrograms, but it works. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, sound and Blender have, like, there is technically a speaker object in Blender, but no one ever uses it. Like, I've used Blender for 8 years now, and I have not used the speaker object once. I forgot it existed. My brain would completely erase that from every memory I ever had. A friend of mine used it once for, I think it was a workaround for something, I believe. But I was like, wait, what's that? They were like, oh, it's a speaker thing. And I was like, there's a speaker thing in Blender? It's just because it's so incredibly niche that I've never really used it. And it feels like a leftover part of the Blender game engine, if I'm being honest. You could put in a sound clip and then it does that. But using noise, sound in Blender is very annoying, because the only way to make sound work in animation, as far as I know, is to bake the sound to an F-curve and then put it in there. There is no modifier for making sound work in animation. Here, let me just check this one more time to make sure I didn't forget a very basic thing. Like modifiers, yeah, there's no sound input, which that would be really, really good if we could use that. But I hope we can also get the sound input in geometry nodes as well. One of the community developers recently referenced a Google Summer of Code project, which mentioned that. But we'll see if that ever happens. But yeah. I've been trying to recreate your fireworks one from your last streams. I did a pretty good job, but could not get points to curves to work properly. Yeah, that can be a little annoying. The key to that is that you need a consistent ID for every point. Each point in the fireworks system will have one index that does not get overwritten by any other particle that will ever appear in that system, and so on. Again, my particle system is up on Gumroad if you would like to take a look at that, because that's the system that I used. But it's annoying, but it's the only way I can figure out to make the points to curves thing work correctly. There should be better ways in theory. I've tested out a few which should work, like saying, hey, record when that particle was spawned. If you have that, then you only need to keep track of then you only need to keep track of how many particles there were in that one frame versus however many particles there were in the entire system for all time. But the basic concept is each particle needs a specific ID that will never be used by any other particle in the system. I hope that's understandable. Let's see. Would be cool if you can convert MIDI into mesh. That would be a community edition. Like anything beyond the absolute basics of development would have to be a community edition, because right now Blender development is very strained at the moment. They are cutting off all the non-essential development functions, including geometry nodes, to focus on things that have been severely delayed. Again, Eevee Next has been delayed for 2 years, and it is still in a somewhat similar state to it was like a while ago. Found you assigning ID to it, but the same thing doesn't work. Yeah, I'll go and take a look at that right now, because I need to go back to the other particle system. Alright, let's go over to the particle system. I hope that the wing explanation was good enough for people to understand. So for the trails, there are 2 things that need to be done. So you need to set the ID. So in here, since this is a mesh, that works perfectly fine. There are no new mesh parts being joined into it, so the ID is perfect. And then that ID is used in the particle trail, as we can see here, to be the curve group ID. And then we use the trail age for the sorting of that, which is really good. But when you use this in an actual particle system, it's a lot more annoying. Because, let me look at the size collision once again, because that's just the default. Oh no, please tell me. Okay, good, I didn't edit this with the other project. This is annoying because the particles have an ID, but when new ones get introduced, some of them might have the same value, which is really bad. So, what I found works, which there are probably better ways of doing this. This is just what I found works. Whenever you join 2 particles together, you need to reset the underlying one's ID. So you take the ID of the original particles that you're joining it to, and then you add 2. I added 1, but there were still glitches, so I added 2. I'm not sure why. I think it might be because indices start at 0, but there's probably a better way. I need to look at it again, but I don't really have time for it at the moment. But you take the index and then you stack it on top of the max amount of IDs that are in the previous geometry. So it's annoying, and there should be a better way, but I don't know yet. As far as I know, this is the best method. Just take the the index, stack them up so that they can never go back down, and 2 particles can never have the same index. Because if they do, let me go and undo all the work that I did over here and show you what happens if the particles just have the index as their ID. Just a little example. So if this happens, we should see... there we go. As soon as one gets deleted, the index shifts back down, which is bad, because that means that some particles that are deleted in this version, when they go into the trailing system, they still have that index, because again, the particles get trailed, which means that their past lives, their past frames, still exist. But that's really bad for everything else. So in this case, it works fine up until, boom. Until one dies and then everything goes to hell. So the other system that I just showed, the node group, is how I avoid that. There's probably a better system, but I need to figure that out eventually. I tried a Python script with ChatGPT. It works a bit, just need tweaking some parameters that I don't know. Oh, converting MIDI into mesh. Interesting. Interesting. Alright, what else? You have updated your Be Right Back screen. Yes, I have. I updated it like maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, but my stream schedule has been very sporadic since then, so I haven't really gotten to use it all too much. It was just a random little shader thing, and I was like, you know what, this could look really good as a be right back screen. Alright. But now that we're here, let's go into the icosphere setup, because I want to make another particle system that references the icosphere once again. So let me copy this, do this. So instead of the icosphere being the source of the particles like this, I want to make it so that particles are flung from the mesh. So let's hide this right here. So what I want is to make it so that the icosphere's velocity will be saved. And then we distribute points on the faces, and then, you know, they'll just fly out with the velocity from the mesh. So I've done this before. You probably have seen it. But it would be good for me to implement it into the setup so that people could easily view it without having a ton of headaches. So let's have this, just a simple gravity part right there, just the particle system. Let's go and plug that into there. So the new particles here, I'll need to have those have the velocity from the parent object. So how do we make it so that a object that we reference has a velocity attribute stored? Man, I need to reorder my thoughts about this because I am tripping over myself. Okay. So to do this, we need to sample this object's previous frame's location. So to do that, I'm going to use a simulation zone. And I forgot that searches through all of that. All of the other node groups that I have. It's a little annoying, but I get why it's done. So if we do this and take a look at the second output, we should see that this is 1 frame delayed from the current mesh's location. But we need to fix one thing. On frame 1, the mesh doesn't show anything, which is bad. It's only when it goes to frame 1 that we see the previous one. So how do we fix this? Fortunately, that's extremely simple. We just need to go and plug that into the start information. So here, it looks funky, but it works. We just need that there so that the previous frame's geometry looks like that. So now we can see that that happens, but as we can see, materials get wiped. Again, simulation nodes are bugged. So to put the information on the original mesh, we need to sample the index, which fortunately, it's not too computationally expensive because we are just going to be referring to the other index, which I have seen recently that there may be a bug when doing this, like the indices don't work quite right. But I'm going to assume that that was just a bug that was fixed quickly, I hope. But to get the velocity, we need to compare the past position, which is right here, to the current position. So if we do this, we got the data from this geometry, and now it's being put onto this geometry. I will label it velocity. Velocity. It has been a while since I've been doing this. But if we do this, I forget if this velocity is supposed to be on the bottom or the top. We can see easily. But if we use, I can use an extrude mesh node to tell if it's correct. So let me just plug that into there just for simplicity's sake. So we can see that that is wrong. I need to flip this around. So here we should see that the lines that are extruded, kind of a debug view, are where... no, I was right the first time. I forgot where this was moving. Okay, so if we do this, we should see that it is a 1 frame trail. Actually, wait a second. Something doesn't feel right. Actually, nope, it's correct. This is trailing behind 1 frame on the mesh, and we can see it works quite well. So now, if we go and visualize the velocity, we should see the colors are... Oh wait, let's go and switch this to the color, no text. We can see that the velocity data is accurately stored. So now we can use that for when we put particles on this object. We can tell them, hey, your velocity is already inherited, you're good. Yeah. And here we have that right there. So let's make this into a node group so that we never have to look at it again. That's the goal with all of this. Make it once so that you never have to look at it again. All right, let's make this a group. Make group. Store mesh velocity. Or mesh velocity? I don't know. Oh, and I forgot to put a geometry output. And I should probably make it so that, yeah. Yeah, let's make it so that the named attribute is exposed. Because, you know, yeah. Store, And actually, this doesn't need to be specified as mesh, but maybe it should be. Or, okay, I need to future-proof all of this. But I need to separate components so that all the data that's not used, like this only works on the point domains. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that right now. It's fine. I can update it if that becomes a problem later, but that is a problem for future me. It's like, I'm assuming that people will only use this on a mesh. They won't try this on instances. It won't work as they intend on it should be fine. If I want to future-proof this, I would put in the separate components thing, but it should be fine. Should be. Alright, so now that we have the velocity stored and we can see the named attribute, so that can be customized later on, and maybe I should... Nah, storing it as a named attribute is better. So now if we distribute points on faces, the particles will inherit that data, because fortunately, the distribute points on faces node does do that. There was a time when it didn't. I think. I could be, well, I forget about that, but it's good that that happens. So now we can put new particles in there, and we just need to say, hey, velocity, your velocity is the velocity. Just to make sure. So if we look at the output here, we should... Oh my goodness, that is way too much. Actually, yeah, why is it that much? Did I accidentally set this into the negative again? Did I? Okay, let's also just not look at the trails because those are way too big at the moment. No, I think that might be correct. Nope, it is definitely not. Okay, I screwed something up. Velocity. Oh, wait, that's because... Oh, wait, no, we don't even need that. Okay. No, it's okay. Yeah, there's the offset velocity thing there, so we're good anyway. So... No, this is still inverted. Okay. My brain is... Wait a second. Yeah, no, that looks better. Wait. But the trail... I don't know. If it works, it works. It's been a while since I've done this. Okay. So here we can see that the mesh is moving and the particles have the correct mesh velocity. Now, they technically do have the rotational velocity because, again, the mesh is rotating, but it's okay. That should be accurate. Let me go and store a color attribute, just like with the previous one, just because, you know, having colors is good. Actually, no, that's a very good explanation of another part of the effect. So if we have the color attributes, we can see that since the particles get spawned in, they shouldn't change even after other hue shifts happen, because once they're spawned in, the color data does not get changed. So it's a custom attribute that works just fine, I think. If you can't tell, I'm still getting used to doing this stuff again. Alright, oh, and we don't need any custom attributes, so that can be faster. I forgot about that. I'll update that in the other one as well. Sim... Mesh... Well, no. Sim... Ico velocity. Yeah, that seems to be good enough for that. And I'm also going to go into here, and since we... Oh, wait. Yeah, we just don't need those nodes. We don't need those nodes in there at all. Alright, so now we have that. Let's go back to the other one. So now the velocity is stored. That's good. It feels like there's a bit too much velocity, if I'm being honest. I could put in just a little scale thing, which would be good for convenience, but, you know, everything has to be super generalized, you know? If there are any features that aren't extremely necessary, then don't put them in. But in this case, no, this is for convenience. So I'm going to put in a scale node. The speed ramifications will be so incredibly small due to someone having to reset, having to re-implement the data. Restore it. So, yeah. That'll be good. That means that someone can easily just invert it if they want, and so on. So yeah, that's good. So now I can make it so that it influences it just a little bit, and then it gets turned up even more. And that is good. Do you remember making golden wings? I saw them in your shorts and always wanted to know how you did it. Yeah, I remember that one. If I remember correctly, it wasn't made all too well. It was kind of similar to the sine wave wings, but I forget if I manually animated those. The reason that looked good was because I just instanced a lot of a golden feather model that I made. Isn't this nice? Like, we're finally getting technology that Unity has and Unreal have probably had for the past 10 years. I'm not crying. Like, that's one thing. I've been a little bit demotivated to continue on these geometry nodes projects because on one hand, we finally get the ability to do a lot of things, but also it's like, well, actually, is collision enabled? Because it doesn't feel right. Oh, they have a size of 0, that's why. Let's use size scale, because we need to... Let's just set the default size to be 0.1. With a lot of this stuff, wait, what? Why did size... Oh, don't tell me that's because of... Oh, self-collision, that's why. Right. And why on earth... Oh, yep, okay. So I screwed up a little bit, but we're good now. Are we? Hello? Wait, what? Why is... Wait, what? I am extremely... Oh, wait, no, okay. I am tripping over myself. I apologize, everyone. Size scales like that, so yes, okay, that's why. So if I set this to 0.1, we can actually see the scale. Okay, there we go. Parameters. Like, I do hope that we get nested subpanels eventually, because that is 100% necessary if geometry nodes is going to become good. Actually, wait. Why aren't they rolling? Because the velocity they inherited should... I screwed another thing up because the velocity... Oh, wait. I know why, because I unchecked that. Okay, there we go. So now I should have it so that only this happens. Very good. Actually, come to think of it, why is there an offset velocity input there? No, it kind of makes sense, though. But yeah. We're trying so hard. Like, I've been trying so hard to get technology that has been around for 30 years, I guess? 20, 30 years? Like, rigid body physics, we still can't really do all too well in geonodes. Which is very sad because the current rigid body system in Blender is severely outdated and currently broken due to the dependency graph changes in 2.8. If you have an object that is moving with a modifier, it will not update correctly, or no. Yeah, if you have a collider or the rigid body system that's dynamically moving with a modifier, it won't work correctly. It will only update if the user manually causes an update by like sliding a slider or hiding it. Which is really bad. But it has been a problem for how long is it since 2.8? it's been a problem for a long time, but since all the simulation things are at the, quote, end of life, they're decaying. They will be... Geometry nodes will replace all of it. But for the time being, the systems are just crud because of reasons. And the solution is still years and years away, unfortunately. So the question in my head is just, is it kind of worth it to keep going and making geometry nodes better if, like, the tools that we have, we won't be getting them for a long time. Again, with the view layer stuff, like, how would you get the world gravity, which is an attribute that's just here? How would you get that world gravity into your geometry node scene without using a driver, because drivers suck, and they are less than reliable? Like the simulation range, that one does work, if I'm correct, with geo nodes. Audio, audio. Rigid body world. Like the rigid body world, we don't have access to this. Like, would be good. And then wiggle scene. Oh, that's from the, yeah, that's from an add-on that I have, which is very useful for procedural animation. Really, really good. Because, again, it was mentioned that bone nodes might become a thing, like Unreal Engine's control rig. But again, that's going to be multiple years away before it even starts becoming a thing. But hopefully when that does come around, development will be faster, since geometry nodes did a lot of the heavy lifting with getting the UI parts in. But yeah, we are a long way away from geometry nodes becoming good enough. But I'm hoping that it does eventually. But for the time being, it is useful. It's useful even in production. But it could be a lot more useful if we got more tools. Size deflect. If I turn that on, or no, self collision. Oh wow, size collision's okay. Huh. That's good. Next thing that we need is GPU support for this. But again, someone was making a real-time fluid simulation, or smoke simulation solver. Kind of like EmberGen, which EmberGen is amazing software. Even in, like, the first betas that I tried out, it was so good. But geometry nodes, it's kind of loosely planned for GPU acceleration for stuff like simulation nodes eventually, but again, years and years away. We'll see. Yeah, but Unity and Unreal don't have cycles and Suzanne. Unreal has something that's comparable to cycles. Like, Unreal Engine has a lot of cool technology, but there is so much bloat in that program, I can't say I really enjoy using it all too much. It does not feel like a smooth experience. Let's see. The particle system is freaking awesome. You deserve a doctor title for this. No, I do not. This system is fairly basic. The collisions are still very much a work in progress, and so on, but it's the basics. I need to add in a octree or a KD tree for the particle self-collisions to not be super expensive. Right now, I'm using the lazy and not good method of the index of nearest node, which internally, I believe, uses a KD tree. I need to check the source code again. But we only get the index of the first nearest, which means that if you have two particles of different sizes, the collisions will never be accurate because of reasons. But anyway, because again, if you only get the nearest and you can't take into account the size, it sucks. But yeah. I mean, we're talking about free software with tools that does almost anything. Correct. Yep. Blender is free software, which we do need to keep that in mind when comparing it to paid software. Yeah. Because Blender is very, very close to being industry standard. if not already. I forget if it on paper is or not, but it's very good. It's just some aspects of it are very much showing its age, and some things broke in 2.8 because of the dependency graph, and they were never updated, which is unfortunate. But I should use this opportunity to mention donating to Blender helps. If you contribute to Blender, thank you very much. It's very good. It's very good to contribute to a program which, for some people, including myself, is reliable for, it is the reason for my entire career, which is very nice. Alright. I don't know what else to do with this system. I think we're at the end of the stream today. So thank you all for watching. If you have any last questions, please ask them now, because it'll probably be a while before the next stream, if I'm being honest. Alright. It's just, oh wait, I need to go over the menu switch, which I will do. It's just that since now we're going into the geometry nodes hibernation and such, I feel like I'm hitting the limit of what my math knowledge can do. When we get new nodes, there will be new updates for the node setup. Specifically with the menu switch, it will allow for more better UI additions. Another reason why the hair system was very much not ready. If they had the menu switch back then, it would have been probably significantly easier to do stuff. Panels, I think, would have been the most significant in terms of UI, but we'll see. Okay, so all that's good. Yeah, let me go over the menu switch. What was that empty for? That was for the spirits thing. So, when I get around to it, this example will be uploaded to Gumroad. Just so that you can see all the cool stuff. So 2 examples of either trailing an object or making particles with the accurate velocity. Which here, let me set the trail length to 1. And then take a look at all this. Oh no, you cannot even see the trail. Maybe if I set it to like 3. Oh, you can barely see it. This one doesn't need a trail. Even though, you know, it does look cool. Trails always look cool. Like, now that I have the particle system made, I need to make some very cool examples with it. I've already made a few. But I want to make one like, tons of snow, like, whirling around like in a blizzard, and then you can control it and such. But at that point, it's like, well, maybe you should do it with an actual GPU particle software. Have you considered creating a Boyd's particle system? I've considered it, yes, but at the moment I do not have the knowledge to make a good KD tree for that, which that is fairly necessary for an effect such as that, I think. Getting particle to particle interaction for some particles to see what other particles are doing. At the moment, I don't have the knowledge for that. In Blender, under the hood, they make it, but I'm worried that if I were to try to make my own, it would not be nearly fast enough. But if anyone knows, please, again, get in contact with me, because that would be a very great addition. That looks pretty cool. Actually, if we get rid of the particles and just look at the trails, yeah, that's cool. Let's go and set the velocity to be 1 and see how that looks. Oh, that's cool. Alright, let's set this to be 0.2 again, just reset it. Even though the trails do look really, really cool, I'll keep them just because, like, that's not... Oh, and I can get rid of this and turn off that. So now it's like that. Good. Yeah, I'll keep them. The good part about making your own particle node system is that it's smaller than, you know, like the entire trail and other mesh system is smaller than distributing the points on faces and setting a new color for all of them. Okay, do you know what particle life is... Sorry, the message is getting cut off by the emoji button in the YouTube chat. The particle life. I believe the particle life is for... Oh, you mean the in this system, not the old Blender system. The life is just the normalized age value. So once a particle spawns in, it'll start off with a life of 0. But then when it gets close to its death time, it'll be 1 instead of a usual age. Now, I was debating keeping that in there because it's a little more expensive to store that as a named attribute every single time instead of having the equation available. But then again, just store it. It makes it more convenient for users, which is good. I didn't do that for the trail though, so I'm using the trail age and I could use the trail lifetime for that. So consistency would be good regarding that, and I could add it to the trail fairly easily, but you know, not entirely, but I'll think about it. But yeah, it would be nice to make a Boyd's particle system. It would be nice to make a lot. But again, the question is, should I be making stuff that is simply a recreation of stuff that's already in Blender, just locked behind a coding wall? Oh, not that. I was talking about something about Conway's Game of Life. Oh, yeah, people have done that in GeoNodes before. It's not the most difficult thing on the planet. Assuming that you have, like, the grid IDs laid out well. But yeah, stuff like that, like cellular automata, is very much possible in Blender. Very much. Things that are grid-based can be done in Blender, but again, you might as well do that on Unreal or anything that has a GPU particle system or grid-based buffer system. Because whatever you do in Blender will be 100 times slower because it's on the CPU. Or, okay, it won't be 100 times slower, it'll be slower because the CPU does every single thing sequentially while the GPU does everything in parallel. Which, doing things in parallel is good when you have hundreds of thousands of particles. Here, I have hundreds. It cannot deal with thousands. Like, the timings on this is 9... Okay, no, it's 20 milliseconds. That, the entirety games run within that time frame. This is horrendously slow. And I'm wondering, oh, how do I make it faster? And I'm wondering if it's even possible to make it faster. Well, I know it is possible. Because Blender's default particle system is 10 times faster when it comes to collisions than this. Unfortunately, I don't know how they made it that much faster. Like here, without collisions, we can see that, or wait, self-collisions are still a thing, so I can uncheck that. Here, it's 2-3 milliseconds. Still too slow, because of, well, if this was going to be fast enough to work in a game, and again, Blender is not a game engine. Blender should not be a game engine. But we want this to be fast enough so that people can work with this in real time, if it's needed. The last thing that you want is, your bottleneck in whatever project you're doing is just the leaves flying around in the background or a particle system. Those should be as fast as they can be so that people don't get frustrated by, oh, why is this thing lagging out my scene? Because there are many other things that will be, like, well, that's a story for another time with how armature deformation speeds are. Alright. I'm tempted to learn C++ just to optimize Blender myself. Yeah. Like, if I could, like, I do have a little, I have dabbled in C++, but I'm not nearly experienced enough to make nodes or stuff like that. If I could, I would, because a lot of people, including myself, are dependent on geometry nodes for stuff regarding, you know, it helps out with work quite a bit. So it would be good if we had access to the data that is necessary. The data that is accessed by other, you know, all the other physics systems. Alright. So, when I get around to it, this will be uploaded to Gumroad. This doesn't need the trails. Yeah, I'll get rid of the trails for this. If you want, you can add it back in, just for, optimizations. And to make the node setup smaller, because if it's like, oh, what's your particle system? And it's just, oh, that's the actual particle system. That's not bad. And actually, I can make this even simpler by just doing this. Huh. Yep, there we go. Make it as simple as possible. It's good when your entire particle system can be collapsed into something like this. And this has more flexibility than Blender's default particle system, but it's missing some very necessary features. But yeah, that's a GeoNode's limitation. Alright. Like, I'll just save that for, that'll be a conversation for another time. But thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. There are many things I want to try out with this. Like, oh, and also, I got the sphere effector working. There are some things I can change with it, because right now it doesn't take the object scale into account, which I was thinking about adding, but it was like, wait, I need to add in like the X, Y, and Z scale, which I forgot how to do that, so I need to re-add that. But yeah, let's go and just save this in the correct position. All this. Alright. And I need to select this one. Which technically, the mesh velocity will not be assigned as an asset just yet, even though I should. Maybe I'll do that, but if it is, you'll see it in the nodes setup, because that could be, no, that would be very useful. Okay, let's use, let's see, mesh velocity, store mesh velocity, yeah. So that one will be there, and it will be good. Geometry in, geometry out. Yeah. Okay. Extra nodes, that one will be good. Or no, that should be in the velocity parts right here. Even though it's technically, like, not one of the support nodes right here. Yeah, no, that'll work just fine. Alright, and I will mark that as an asset, because that could be very, very useful later on. And then I would probably need to have an enum, or a menu. I forgot to go over the menu switch. Okay, let me go over this very, very quickly. So the menu switch is a new node that was just added, when was it? Maybe like 2-3 days ago. But it's a menu switch, so you can have multiple items, and you can just switch between them using the new socket input. So here, if I had a node group, actually I could showcase this right now. If we connect this to there, we can see that in the modifier, we can switch between different items, which is very, very good. Actually, I need to check something. If I get rid of, good, very, very nice. Oh, and we can also do that, but I could also oh no, that just means it's animated. Good. So you can switch between different geometry inputs. Sorry about that. I'm getting a little bit, my voice is going. I apologize. You can switch between images, which it would be so nice if we could have that in the shader editor. People have been wanting that for so long, but that would be a community edition, because the devs don't have time. But yeah, you can switch between so many different inputs. Oh, it's interesting that the names are not there. Huh. Alright, but yeah, let's go back to geometry. So, if you go into the node, which it's very funny here, we still have the old arrows, and you can't drag. That fun stuff. Consistency and all that. Here you can label it like orange or whatever. That's the example that they had in the documentation. But you could label these whatever you want. And then you could go and, let's see, echo sphere. And then when you take a look at the output, let's go and just do an echo sphere here. Echo, you probably know what's happening here. Let's do a cube. And then an orange, I'll just make that UV sphere. So here we should see item is nothing. When we switch to icosphere, it looks like this. Just an icosphere and then mesh orange. And then all that, it's very useful. It will be very useful. People were hoping that stuff like the mix nodes and map range nodes would also have the socket exposed now. That is technically the plan, but I don't know if it'll happen like this year, or I don't know if the enum inputs will be added anytime soon. It's technically planned, but since the base functionality is there, I think we'll probably have to make the workarounds. Well, since the workaround exists of just having multiple ones of these and then plugging them into one input, which actually, no, you can't have multiple, you can't have different input types here. So it would auto-convert. No, yeah, no. Yep. It would be good to have the enums exposed because the workarounds are not good enough. Because they will be auto-converted. Wait a minute. Oh, right, that's because that's the output. But yeah, anyway, that node is very good. I'm looking forward to it. There's also the index switch, which is basically its cousin. Basically the same thing, except you can switch around using an index, and this can be a field. So this can work for each point or spline or whatever you want. So that's good. But it needs to be anything other than a geometry, because again, field values, the diamonds versus the circles. So yeah, that's how it works. It works. These are very good nodes. It's very, very good. Getting a little bit more coding functionality in default Blender, which is good. Oh, yeah, okay. I've been doing this for too long. We're getting closer to 3 hours instead of 2. My voice is very much going. Sorry about that, but thank you all for watching. Oh, wait. Let me read the chat once again. Let's see, what is the main, what is the main pipeline software you use day to day? What do I use daily as my kind of software? It's mostly Blender, a little bit of Unreal, maybe a hint of Houdini if I'm trying to figure some stuff out. Maybe, yeah, it varies a bit, but mainly Blender and Unreal usually. Mainly for work and stuff. Apparently GeoNodes used to have a very limited API for Blender Python, but that ended in 3.6. Dang. Wait, I don't remember that. I really don't remember that. Huh. It's weird. Like, it would be, like, I don't want necessarily Blender API access because that could possibly lead to horrendous dependency problems. You looked at it today. Ah, okay. It was broken. Okay. Like here, if you input attributes... Actually, wait, what was it? If I add in a mesh, like, the attribute system is very weird. Apparently, the developers didn't even... Here, let's input... Oh, did they fix that? They fixed it, dang it. Before, the attributes here would show you which vertice and edge and face you had selected, which shouldn't have been possible, which is why they got rid of it. But the devs didn't even know that existed, because they just added the option to view any attributes that's on the mesh, which included attributes that you shouldn't have access to, which was really, really funny. Yeah. What was I saying? Anyway, like, stuff like this is very good, because it's like, oh, you can get the position of an object, because that's just the data that's inside of it. Before you can have access to that, it just wasn't really possible. You can see which faces are sharp versus not sharp, and so on. All this data, and you can get data from anywhere using the view layer attributes. Like, instead of having to wait for the devs to implement an active camera node, which will only give you the object's location, rotation, and scale, you can go and get that data yourself, and get even stuff like the resolution and stuff like that. I know I keep talking about it, but I'm still holding off on a community developer to add that because it would be so useful, and it's currently not in any of the plans I've seen, so it won't be happening in 2024 unless someone from the community adds it, unfortunately. But all that data, currently the only way to kind of get access to it is by using drivers, but drivers are very unreliable when it comes to that due to, you can't copy them, and you can't get other data types besides a float and maybe a boolean with that. Meanwhile, the view layer attributes could get, in theory, object data, like, oh, what's your parent? Currently, there's no way to access, like, the parent object reference in Blender. So, I was looking into trying to make that in the Blender source code, but unfortunately, I do not have time for it. So, if any community developers are listening, if it wouldn't cause any great dependency breakages and stuff like that, if a node like that would be possible, it would basically be the named attribute node, but view layer instead of geometry based, just like how in the shader editor you can change it from, you can switch from geometry to object to instancer to view layer. Right now in geometry nodes, we only have access to geometry and instancer. And I guess technically object, well, no, not really. I need to think about that. I don't think we can have access to object level data. But view layer attributes, if we can have that in GeoNodes, where it can output stuff like strings, that would be so useful for seeing like which objects are, or I'm forgetting where I was going with that. But if you can have access to stuff like, oh, let's reference this object, the parent object, that would make the deformed curves and surfaces node able to be made inside of Blender without having the user to put it in manually and all that good stuff. But anyway, that would make geometry nodes so much more useful. Like if you want to get the scene gravity, having that in there would be very useful without needing to use the hacking methods. I just put a link in general on your Discord. Ah, thank you. I will take a look at that. All right. I should look through the Blender source code again because in theory it should be possible to do. Right, and this part is not necessary at the moment. I forgot about that. Okay. Thank you all for watching. I prolonged the stream way too long, but then again, haven't streamed this week. But thank you all for watching, and again, donate to the Blender Foundation if you can. If you can. Because, yeah, if we want Blender to be better, they need the funding for it. Oh, one other thing I forgot to talk about. Recently, Blender, showcased their next open movie that they've been working on, which they will be using geometry nodes quite a bit in, because they're trying to go the, not Spider-Verse / Arcane method of making it look very, hand-painted, brushstrokes and all that, but they're using, one of the characters will have like a will like be made out of either plaster or rock, and they will have kind of fractured objects all over them, like they will be fractured. And I found that very funny because I'm assuming they made it before me because, again, the thing's been in production for months. But I made a system similar to that a few weeks ago, where you can have a ton of fractured instances being deformed by an object. So you could have a human that looks like he's made out of stone, and the stone's accurately deformed with the person. So I found that very, very cool that they're working on a similar setup. And I'm not even sure if they use geometry nodes or not. I'm assuming that they probably are for prototyping, but for the end result, they will probably use an armature because, again, collisions are pain. So, yeah. How to find my Discord server? It's very much dead at this point, but I'll go and put a link in there in the chat. If you want to join, perfectly fine, but it has been mostly dead for a long time. Let's see, let's just copy the invite. It's mostly there if I need it. I'm not there often. It's there in case, you know, people need to share links, as people have shown. All right. Yeah. General, okay. Alright, thank you all for watching. I will see you next time, and I might hang out in the Discord later if I'm still working on the geometry node stuff. I still have a few things left to do before I can upload it to Gumroad. But yeah. Can you explain the math nodes? I would recommend just looking up, I think Arendelle probably has some good videos on that, or if you just look up Blender Vector Math or Math Nodes, there are very good videos on that, which I would not be very good at explaining at this time, because I am very much, I've gone past my limit of streaming for today. But thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one, and if you make anything with the particle system, let me know, because the point of this is to be convenient enough to... Wait, what was I saying? The purpose of this is to be convenient enough to use regularly, like a regular particle system. The goal of this is to make it like Unity or Unreal's particle systems that they've had for years. We have to implement it ourselves because, again, the developers do not have time for it. And Geometry Nodes is arguably just barely able to do it at the moment. But that's the goal. Push Geometry Nodes as far as it can, because all the other things are going to be depreciated eventually. Alright, see you all next time. Have a good one.